The other thing that I'm curious about and want to get your thoughts on is in terms of the length of the game. How long do you think that this game will be as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Patrick Redding has actually addressed this to a degree because, again, they did so many interviews back in like 2020 when we all thought the game was going to launch early 2021, and they kept like doing all these press tours for it, press releases for the game, and interviews for it, which was really indicative of a fairly imminent release. But clearly, I think that there must have been something to do with the current generation PS4s and Series X's that just wasn't working. And my guess is that was a big factor into why the game got delayed so long. And now they're just not even going to release them on those consoles. But back in the day when that was being talked about, when the game was slated for 2021, I remember Patrick Redding saying that the game cannot actually be completed in a weekend. And now I don't know if he means the campaign or if he's talking like platinuming the game, because there's a lot of games that you can't platinum in a weekend. In fact, Arkham Knight, you'd be very hard pressed to finish that quickly, for example. So I
Sure.
think that what we're looking at is actually going to be something that is very big in scope. We've seen the map of Gotham City, the size, they've shown us the whole thing. And so it to me looks like probably at least twice the size of Arkham Knight, if not three times, because even though there's five boroughs instead of the three that Arkham Knight had, they're more landlocked. They're not all separated by a lot of water. So I think that the city is going to feel significantly bigger. And I think to go with that, you're going to get a lot more side content. I think that there's going to be a lot of city activities. We've already seen in some of the gameplay that, for example, instead of just thugs roaming the streets, you can chase vehicles. You can go and stop Mr. Freeze's, uh, you know, conspirators that he's working with who have stolen organs for him and such. And so there's more to do in the city this time around. There's more in terms of activities to do in the open world. I think that there's going to be a lot more side missions this time around. And in terms of the main campaign's length, I would honestly guess that it is going to feel more akin to a recent Assassin's Creed game than an Arkham or Spider-Man game. I think that we're looking at probably a 20-hour long campaign with probably double that at least in activities around the city. I'm sure that there will be collectible side missions. Um, I could see there being something similar to Riddler trophies, but there being a lot more of them. I could see there being like 1,000 things to pick up for a certain side mission that you have to go locate around the city. I bet there's going to be a lot of bases with waves of enemies to take out. And again, they've mentioned that the story isn't super linear. Like they've made it sound as though you have to do some investigations to figure out what your next leads are, what to investigate next. And so I feel that the story will probably take more of an approach where you have to go and start investigating and realize, oh, Two-Face might be involved with this. Oh, Penguin might be involved with this. Okay, so my next objectives are to go interact with both of those villains. And then, of course, you'll get like a brief gameplay experience where you go on a little quest that involves that villain, and then you go to the next one. And then once you've kind of wrapped up those leads, it will trigger another cutscene that takes you to the next step of the main campaign. So I think that it's a little bit different than what we saw in the Arkham games. It would be like if in Arkham Origins, when they show you the 8 assassins at the beginning of the game, they told you as the player, all right, now go take them out in whatever order you want, and then the main campaign progresses that way. But I do anticipate something that is going to take roughly, this is a pretty big gap, but roughly between 20 to 60 hours to complete. Um, I would not be surprised if there are comparisons to the length of Red Dead 2 or Assassin's Creed Origins. It might be a bit shorter than those games just because those are absolutely massive, but I think that it will be more akin to that than the traditional 6 hour to 12-hour long Arkham campaign with roughly 20 to 40 hours of side content. I think it's going to be about double or triple that.
I completely agree. I think you're right, and we sort of see that in terms of the cadence of some of the cutscenes. That there are sort of down moments and points where it's not pedal to the metal heavy. Like you play through Batman Arkham City. I mean, it is literally just like pedal to the metal nonstop action for 6 hours without really much to breathe. And you do have character moments throughout there, of course, but they're very very brief. In this game, you see some of these cutscenes where it's just again Nightwing and Batgirl like in the Belfry chatting, hanging out, and you have sort of these down moments that remind me a lot of Spider-Man PS4 in terms of the cadence and pace. By the way, another thing that's very interesting, I pointed this out many times. Uh, the gameplay of this game looks much more similar to Spider-Man PS4 than Batman Arkham, and I think that the story structure is going to resemble it a little bit more too. Like from what I'm seeing in terms of the cutscenes, it gives me like Feast, Aunt May, Peter Parker vibes, like just hanging out at Feast, talking and like having these character moments and um, having character development, those sort of things. I'm seeing a lot of that. I think that the game will probably be between 15 to 20 hours in length at a minimum to play through the main story, and especially because they're leading so heavily into um, the side missions and kind of like the open world RPG stuff. They do have like a traditional kind of level up system wherein you can have skill trees, and obviously, if you complete side missions, it helps with the skill trees. And part of me is kind of thinking that what Jeff Elnor said is that if you complete the entire story, you still will not have the whole skill tree unlocked for one character. So if you main one character the entire game and complete the entire story, you still will not have enough tokens or points to be totally maxed out as a character. So that means that you might be severely underpowered by the sort of late second act, third act of the game if you do not sort of complete side missions, complete these one-off crimes where you go and beat up like 15 people and get some XP, that sort of thing. And that would indicate to me as well that there are a myriad of side missions, little challenges, other things like that would indicate that this game is going to be pretty lengthy, and of course that amount of time is probably needed to provide the amount of exposition needed for this universe, and also um, discuss the mystery of Batman and the Court of Owls, which there's obviously a lot to uncover there and a lot to explain, given that this is the first installment into this franchise. We are starting, even though this is 20 years into Batman's career, he's dead, and all these sort of things. This is for us. This is chapter one, page one, chapter one. So they have some explaining to do and some context to provide that I think is going to take some time to develop, which is great for players. That means you're getting bang for your buck. The game is the same cost, whether it's a 6-hour story or a 20-hour story. So the way I see it, we might as well look forward to playing a game that's going to take a couple of days to beat for the hardcore fans, and maybe a couple of weeks for the average player.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We've waited a long time for this game too, since 2015, and I think that not only is this going to most likely, I would be very surprised if it's not the longest Batman game to date. But and I know everyone gets mad at me when I call it a Batman game. It really is. It just doesn't feature Batman. It has every other element of a Batman game though.
Correct.
But it's going to be the longest entry in any Batman mythologically inspired AAA DC video game. But not only that, it's a game that will feel slightly different when you go back to replay it if you choose to main different characters. You could most likely play through this game 4 different times and have it be a pretty distinct experience each time, just because they are going to let you play through as the alternate characters. I'd imagine that their lines are different when you go through the cutscenes. And I think that, going back to the topic of the video, getting to see each of their reactions to Bruce Wayne either being dead, or coming back in some capacity will be worth the experience, or at least checking out the YouTube versions of the different characters and seeing how the different characters react to either his resurrection at some point in the story or his uh that finality of his death. I know that in one of the um in that 15-minute gameplay demo for Batgirl, Robin makes a statement about how Batman went missing. He's either having a hard time accepting the fact that Batman's dead, or perhaps they are not yet ruling out the possibility that he's alive, and that comes later, that they realize nope, he's gone. And so I think that ultimately that is going to be a huge selling point of the story, is whether or not Batman is actually dead and how each character will reconcile that.